In the shadow of an isolated clinic in Nueva Paltina, a young medical intern named Mariana Sanchez found herself trapped in a tiny, unlit room, cut off from the world she once knew and subjected to relentless harassment. She pleaded for help, filing official complaints that vanished without a trace, only to be found days later suspended by a rope in the very space meant to shelter her, as her body was swiftly cremated, destroying the last hope of uncovering the truth. An entire system seemed complicit in silencing her cries. What really happened to Mariana Sanchez? And how far did those responsible go to bury the evidence of her fate? This is the murder of Mariana Sanchez. On that Thursday, Mariana was preparing to leave. She planned to spend one final weekend in Nueva Palestina, Chiapas, before heading home. The harassment hadn't let up, and she confided in her mother that she no longer felt safe. She mentioned she'd try speaking with the clinic director one last time. All she wanted was to leave that place behind. But then she went silent. Mariana had been made to live in a cramped room right beside the clinic where she worked. The following day, her body was discovered inside. What really happened to Mariana? She asked for help. Why wasn't anyone listening? So why was Mariana assigned to such a dangerous and isolated location? And why did the authorities destroy key evidence so quickly, cutting the investigation short before her family could find any answers? This young woman had dedicated herself to helping others, yet when she needed protection the most, no one came to her aid. Mariana was born in Mexico City on July 16, 1995, and spent the first months of her life there. Her mother, Lourdes, had only one child. Her father was largely absent, especially after their separation, and little is known about him. During her early years, Mariana traveled between Mexico City and Tuxtla Gutierrez, where her maternal grandparents lived. But by the age of 6, she made the decision to stay permanently in Tuxtla Gutierrez with her mother. Though details about her childhood and adolescence remain limited, she was remembered as a cheerful yet quiet and reserved girl. After graduating from high school, Mariana initially pursued dentistry at a local college, but later realized her true calling was in medicine. She transferred to the Universidad Autónoma de Chiapas to become a doctor. Mariana was a dedicated student who performed well academically and gained hands-on experience by working in private clinic. Her ultimate goal was to specialize in pathology. Like many young adults, she enjoyed spending time with friends, going to parties, and staying active at the gym. Those who knew her described her as kind, intelligent, and deeply loyal, the type of friend who would always have your back. Even when faced with tough challenges, Mariana confronted them with courage. On social media, she often shared memes, uplifting quotes, and posts about her love for junk food and sweet. She also used her platform to advocate for causes she believed in, such as legalizing abortion and raising awareness about the importance of donating blood, bone marrow, and organs to save lives. As part of her final year in medical school, Mariana was required to complete her social service at a public clinic in Monterrey. Just a few hours away from where her mother had recently moved, Mariana and Lourdes weren't just mother and daughter. They were inseparable, true best friends. Their bond grew even stronger after Lourdes was diagnosed with cancer, and they faced every hurdle side by side. Because of their close relationship, Mariana made it a priority to visit her mother every weekend she could. The social service was a mandatory step before she could begin her medical residency. Students were assigned placements through a public selection process, determined in part by academic performance. For this work, Mariana received a modest monthly stipend of about $100 to $150. In August 2020, at the age of 24, she was assigned to the health center in Nueva Palestina, Tena, an indigenous community within the municipality of Ocosingo, Chiapas. The location was remote and poorly equipped, making the assignment a significant challenge for most. But for Mariana, it quickly became overwhelming. Upon arrival, she was placed in a small, bare room that was hardly livable. Reports described it as having 4 unpainted gray walls and no bed, forcing Mariana to either bring her own or improvise with whatever she could find. The room was infested with insects and lacked even the most basic necessities, including a bathroom. With no internet or reliable cell service, she was completely cut off from the outside world. To use the restroom, she had to walk across an empty lot and share poorly maintained facilities with colleagues. Her room didn't even have a proper door, just a sheet of black plastic serving as a makeshift curtain. The clinic itself was little more than a modest structure built on an isolated plot of land. The local community, despite having very limited resources, had come together to build the clinic in hopes of gaining access to much-needed medical care. But while the intentions behind the clinic were noble, the reality was far more troubling. The living conditions were harsh and the area itself was known to be dangerous. There had already been reports of violence against healthcare workers in the region. From the moment Mariana arrived, she felt like she didn't belong. Her mother later recalled that as soon as she stepped into the building, Mariana had an overwhelming urge to leave. News of thefts and even lynchings in the area left her feeling isolated and frightened. Her room had a broken door, leaving her completely vulnerable at night. These conditions intensified her sense of fear and anxiety. But even worse than the lack of safety or basic amenities was the constant harassment she endured. Mariana felt even more vulnerable after confiding in her family that a coworker was harassing her. She wanted to request a transfer, but navigating the bureaucracy and lack of institutional support made it nearly impossible. Her mother urged her to leave the clinic altogether. But Mariana was determined to complete her social service and begin her medical career. Though she had little opportunity to communicate due to her heavy workload and lack of cell service, she managed to tell her mother she planned to speak with the clinic director about a transfer. Despite reporting the harassment multiple times, neither the local authorities nor her university responded with the seriousness the situation demanded. Her request for reassignment was ultimately ignored, leaving her trapped in an increasingly hostile and dangerous environment. By November, the situation had taken a frightening turn. Mariana sent a distressing message to her mother and a close friend, describing a traumatic incident. One night, the same coworker who had made her feel unsafe for months entered her room while heavily intoxicated. Before she could react, he climbed into her bed and began touching her aggressively. Mariana fought back with everything she had, trying to get him to stop, but he refused to leave. Her roommate, a nurse, wasn't there that night, leaving Mariana completely alone and vulnerable. Even before this horrific incident, she had filed an official complaint in an effort to escape the danger she was living in. But instead of offering support, the clinic director dismissed her concerns, insisting they needed her there and denying her transfer request. Left with no alternative, she remained in an environment that was becoming increasingly unsafe. According to her mother, the harassment from the man next door continued night after night. She suspected that Mariana hadn't shared the full extent of what was happening, likely out of a desire to protect her. The abuse may have gone far beyond what Mariana ever admitted. Despite the fear and isolation, she showed incredible courage, doing what few women in Mexico dare to do, speaking up. Mariana officially reported the harassment to both the clinic staff and the public prosecutor's office, but no meaningful action was taken. The clinic managers responded by simply bringing her to Molly's and suggesting she take some time off to recover. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's office dismissed her complaint and placed the case on hold without any further investigation. Mariana wasn't alone in recognizing the negligence of those responsible for her protection. Witnesses revealed that the harasser even forced his way into her room by breaking the door open. The clinic director's only response was to advise her to take a few days off and promise the man would be fired, something that never happened. Frustrated and distraught, Mariana filed another formal complaint with Anachiopes, the body responsible for overseeing her safety during this final stage of her studies. Yet nothing substantial came from it. The situation became a terrible nightmare, and the very thought of returning to the clinic filled her with terror. Then in January 2021, a devastating event unfolded. On Thursday, January 28th, Mariana had already packed her bags and was preparing to return to Tuxtla Gutierrez that weekend after finishing her final appointments. She spoke with her mother that day, but Lourdes immediately sensed something was wrong. Her daughter sounded tense, hurried, and emotional. Mariana confided that the harassment was still ongoing and that she planned to speak with the clinic director once more in hopes of finding a resolution. She promised to call her mother after work, but that call never came. By Friday, January 29th, Mariana still hadn't responded. Late that morning, one of Mariana's friends broke the heartbreaking news to her mother. Mariana had been found dead, hanging by a rope in the tiny room where she had been living, right beside the clinic. The news hit her family like a crushing blow. They were overwhelmed with shock and filled with countless questions. Despite her own poor health, Lourdes immediately booked a flight to the south of the country. After a grueling journey of over 8 hours with multiple transfers and layovers, she finally arrived and was able to reclaim her daughter's body. However, the officials delayed the process and Lourdes wasn't permitted to see Mariana's body until the following morning. Unable to bear the thought, she chose not to open the coffin, fearing the pain of seeing her daughter like that. She spent nearly 20 minutes gazing at the closed coffin before it was taken away. The autopsy revealed little beyond confirming that Mariana had died from asphyxiation by hanging. The official report labeled it a suicide. Yet, while Lourdes and the rest of the family were absent, Mariana's body was cremated that very same day. Lourdes was certain she had never signed any document authorizing the cremation. The family was stunned by how rapidly everything was handled. There was no time for a proper farewell, and the rushed process only deepened their suspicions. The swift and definitive conclusion about Mariana's cause of death left those closest to her filled with questions. Her history of harassment and the ongoing investigation had clearly been overlooked. The family's lawyer highlighted significant flaws in the handling of the case. He emphasized that the cremation of Mariana's body was not only unlawful, but also violated Mexico's Federal Criminal Procedure Code. According to this law, anyone who dies violently, including cases of suicide, cannot be cremated because it destroys vital forensic evidence. The decision to cremate Mariana made further investigation nearly impossible. As public outrage intensified, the Chiapas prosecutor's office issued a statement claiming the autopsy found no signs of physical or sexual assault. They also stated that Mariana had never formally reported any sexual crimes to the police. Despite their reassurances, their words did little to quell the growing anger spreading across the nation. Medical interns from across the region, along with students from the Universidad Autónoma de Chiapas, launched an indefinite strike. They refused to accept the police narrative about Mariana's death and demanded a thorough investigation. Students from both the medical and gerontology faculties penned an open letter to the university administration calling for accountability for those who ignored Mariana's pleas for help. They labeled her death a femicide, not a suicide, insisting she was killed, something that could have been prevented if her complaints had been taken seriously. As public outrage intensified, people from all walks of life joined the demand for justice. Social media became a powerful platform to expose the inconsistencies and negligence surrounding Mariana's case. Thousands used hashtags like #JusticiaParMariana to share messages, videos, and stories condemning the institutions that failed to protect her. The movement rapidly gained momentum, sparking widespread anger across the country. Before long, the call for justice expanded beyond online protests into real-world action. Many people saw Mariana's case not as the result of a single person's negligence, but as a failure of the entire system. Despite her repeated pleas for help, both the government and the university turned a blind eye. The university, which should have protected her during her final months of study, failed to support her family in their pursuit of justice. As public pressure mounted, the case sparked a nationwide conversation. This exposed how long institutions had neglected the tragedy. In response, the Ministry of the Interior instructed the Chiapas Attorney General's office to follow legal protocols for investigating gender-based violence deaths and ensure the case was handled with a gender-sensitive approach. In a public statement, the police affirmed they were maintaining close contact with Mariana's family and promised to provide all necessary support and resources. They also confirmed that the Chiapas Secretariat for Gender Equality was involved, offering assistance to Mariana's grieving mother. Despite still recovering from surgery, Lourdes publicly expressed her gratitude to everyone who had stood behind her daughter's cause on February 2nd. In a heartfelt video shared on social media, Lourdes spoke out against government officials who tried to blame her for what happened to Mariana. "To those questioning my role as a mother and asking where I was," she said, "I was living outside Chiapas, working hard to secure a future for my daughter. Some say I was wrong to let her work so far away, but she had her reasons for being there. The abuse she endured was never her fault." Her words resonated deeply with many and revealed the deep mistrust she felt toward the authorities. At that time, Lourdes still hadn't been granted access to the case file or an official copy of the investigation. She urged the public to keep pushing for genuine justice. Justice without scapegoating or manipulated court processes, expressing her frustration with the lack of transparency. Then on February 13th, Anay, the clinic director in Nueva Palestina where Mariana worked, was arrested. The Chiapas State Attorney General's office accused Anay, the clinic director, of abusing her power by failing to report the mistreatment Mariana was enduring despite being aware of it. Although Mariana had repeatedly complained, Anay dismissed her concerns with gestures like offering soup and time off. She also promised to transfer the man harassing Mariana but never followed through. In a bizarre turn, it was Anay who called the police after Mariana's body was discovered on the morning of January 29. A judge ordered her to remain in pretrial detention, citing clear evidence of negligence. Independent journalists who examined the police report noted a glaring omission. The Chiapas Attorney General's office allowed Mariana's body to be cremated, effectively preventing any further forensic analysis. The case file also revealed significant flaws in the typical handling of femicide investigations. Despite Mariana's previous warnings that she was in danger, the investigation appeared more focused on eliminating external suspects than on identifying who might be responsible. The report painted Mariana in a negative light, describing her as confused, uncommunicative, and difficult while largely ignoring the gender-based violence she endured. The official stance remained that Mariana alone was responsible for her tragic death. The death certificate stated she died on January 28 at 8:30 p.m. from asphyxiation by hanging. However, crucial forensic details were missing, such as the type of rope used and the exact location of the hanging. What raised even more alarm was that early reports from the scene indicated her body was not found in the typical hanging position. Forensic investigators photographed Mariana kneeling with clenched fists and her arms stretched downward. Some first responders even mistook her posture as a sign of relaxation. To add to the confusion, investigators questioned Mariana's co-workers about irrelevant details, including her personal hygiene. Witnesses claimed she rarely showered, and one alleged she took antihistamines despite the absence of any medical records to confirm this. To Mariana's family, these comments appeared to be deliberate attempts to divert the investigation away from potential suspects and tarnish her reputation. Despite the numerous issues with the investigation, the family's lawyers managed to identify the man who had been harassing Mariana. His name was initially kept confidential, but eventually the truth surfaced. Social media users began sharing photos and the name Fernando Perez Jimenez, believed to be the doctor responsible for Mariana's suffering. On February 18, police raided his home, but by then he was already on the run. A few hours later, Fernando unexpectedly surrendered himself. In a video posted online, he denied any involvement in Mariana's death and claimed he was being targeted unfairly. Despite his protests, he was formally imprisoned, but not for Mariana's death. At that time, he faced charges only related to sexual harassment. The Attorney General's office stated that the harassment case and the investigation into Mariana's death were being handled as separate matters. Still, Mariana's family remained determined to see justice done. Mariana's family never gave up, determined to uncover the full truth and hold the guilty accountable. At an early court hearing, Chiapas Attorney General's office presented solid evidence connecting Fernando to the criminal case. Even more troubling details emerged. He had a history of sexual harassment accusations from multiple women, some dating back several years. Given the seriousness of the evidence, the judge ordered his preventive detention, sending Fernando to prison. Lourdes, Mariana's mother, spearheaded the relentless fight that ultimately led to his arrest. From the very beginning, she refused to stay silent, demanding justice and pushing for answers. Though she showed incredible strength and resolve, the investigation was hampered by lengthy delays and persistent obstacles. Throughout the ordeal, Lourdes continued to endure her own private struggles, carrying her pain quietly as the case dragged on without meaningful progress from the Chiapas government. Lourdes passed away on August 8, 2021, after a prolonged and painful battle with bone cancer, never living to see the justice she so desperately sought for her daughter. During Fernando's trial, the court reviewed Mariana's initial complaint filed just 2 months before her death. Additional evidence revealed that in February 2013, another woman, a nurse, had formally accused Fernando of attempting to assault her at least twice while working at various healthcare facilities in Chiapas. Despite the growing body of evidence, Fernando maintained his innocence. In an early February statement to the police, he claimed he had never even spoken to Mariana. He voluntarily asserted that he was at a medical lab in Tuxtla Gutierrez the day after Mariana's death for routine tests. On November 25, 2021, Fernando was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but only for sexual harassment. After more than a year of investigation, neither he nor anyone else was officially charged, accused, or convicted in connection with Mariana's death. In Mariana Sanchez's case, the forensic evidence remained limited and contentious. Numerous issues were left unresolved, leaving the true circumstances of her death shrouded in uncertainty.